I bought a complete hi-fi system for €1,000, 3 brand new components, and I bought them without hearing any of them first. Now, we've made several videos in years past about €1,000 hi-fi systems, but in this one I wanted to feature brands that haven't really been used too much on this channel. And no, I didn't consult with any of the manufacturers involved in this video. I just went out and bought their gear. And we start with the loudspeakers. They come from DALI, which is a Danish loudspeaker company. And I was looking for something super affordable, like crazy affordable, like €200 affordable. And I landed on the Spektor 2, which is not their smallest speaker. It's the one up from that, because the Spektor 1 is the smallest one. And the reason I went with DALI is because I haven't featured them much on this channel before, but also because they make their own drivers in-house at their facility, which is, I believe, just outside of Aarhus. And DALI are big on using wood or paper fiber to make their own drivers. Inside the Spektor 2 we get a 5¼ inch mid-bass driver and then a 1-inch soft dome tweeter. Nominal impedance of these loudspeakers is rated by DALI at 6 ohms, but the sensitivity, it's a little bit lower than average, 84.5 dB. So that means if we put 1 watt of power into them and we sit 1 meter in front of them, we will register 84.5 dB of sound pressure levels at that listening position. And then at the seat, it probably translates to about 74.5 dB, which is perfect for me. But obviously we need an amplifier that gives us more than 1 watt per channel, because music isn't a steady state signal. It goes up and it comes down, and we need more watts to be able to deliver the peaks in music. So I bought a Rotel integrated amplifier. Why did I choose Rotel? Well, basically because I've owned lots of Rotel gear in the past. I've been to the factory. They wind their own transformers in the factory, which is really impressive. So I guess that was another reason I chose Rotel, because I've been there and I've seen how their stuff is made. So I bought the A11 Tribute amplifier. Now this is a tweaked version, if you like, of the original A11. And those tweaks came from the late Ken Ishiwata, who is famous for being, I guess, the face of Marantz for many years. And he unfortunately passed away at the end of 2019. And the project was finished by Karl-Heinz Fink, who is a sort of gun for hire as a speaker designer, but also runs Fink Design Team loudspeakers. So the A11 basically features changes made by Ken Ishiwata and Karl-Heinz Fink. And those changes are really relating to components like capacitors, resistors and things like that, but also damping materials on the chassis. The A11 Tribute gives us 50 watts per channel into 8 ohms. It is a Class AB amplifier. It features 5 analog inputs, of which 1 is a moving magnet phono input. There is a DAC inside the A11 Tribute, but it's only accessible via Bluetooth. And that Bluetooth input is AAC and aptX capable. But if we want to play lossless streams, we therefore need an external DAC. Now in 2022, I needed a DAC that has a Toslink input as well as USB and maybe coaxial spin-off as well. But I also wanted to get a DAC that has a sample rate display on the front. Now the reason I want a DAC with a Toslink input is because I'm going to take the digital audio out of my TV. And the reason I wanted the sample rate display on the front of the DAC is to see what sample rate of audio is coming out of the TV over that Toslink connection. There aren't too many affordable DACs that give us that Toslink input sample rate display. So I landed on the Topping E30 DAC, which has USB, Toslink, coaxial, and then obviously has analog outputs. And then a display on the front, which also tells us volume level, and it comes with a remote control, so we can change the volume as well and power it on and off. So it's quite a compelling package for not very much money at all. And that Topping remote control looks like this. Now, I don't use this to attenuate volume in this hi-fi system. I run the DAC at full volume because I use the amplifier and its very reassuring volume knob to change the volume on this hi-fi system. Or if I'm sat here, I use Rotel's supplied remote control. And it is a beast. Look at that. Compared to the Topping, it's a real thick boy. I'm not a fan of this kind of remote control, but I guess this is also used to control other components in the Tribute line. And I think you can also access the tone controls built in to the A11 Tribute with this remote if you don't want to sort of get up and use the menu system on the front panel. And there's also a built-in, I guess you'd call it a loudness setting that is really intended for listening at lower volume levels. So it just gives a bit of a boost to the bass and a bit of a boost to the treble when the volume's really low, because our ear's sensitivity is much lower to the frequency extremes at low volumes. Now, on these three components, I spent a total of 938 euros. Now, you'll see behind me that I've got the DALI Spektor 2 on a fairly expensive pair of speaker stands. You obviously do not have to do that. And I would recommend looking at Atacama if you live in the UK for a very affordable loudspeaker stand. I'm not really across what's for sale in the USA, but definitely buy in your local area, because importing stands from overseas is an expensive business because shipping costs are high. But you don't have to put these loudspeakers on stands. They come supplied with some little rubber feet that you can stick on the bottom if you want to put them on a low board. I wouldn't really advise putting them on a low board though, because you ideally want your speakers, the tweeter, to sit pretty close to ear level. Now you might ask, what about cables? I'm using some off-the-shelf AudioQuest speaker cables. I think it's about 50 bucks. Now this $1,000 hi-fi system sounds fantastic. It sounds great, really does. It's thoroughly enjoyable. Not too bright, not too etched. It doesn't have that sort of window wipe vibe that I talk about quite a lot. It's just kind of a little bit warm. It's quite forgiving, but it's just a very easy listen. So if I were to upgrade this system down the line, I would not upgrade the DAC. I would not upgrade the amplifier, and I would not change the speakers. What I would do is I would add a subwoofer, because the Spektor 2 don't go much below 55, 54 hertz, which isn't especially low. And the Rotel amplifier has pre-amplifier outputs, so we could easily add a sub in augmentation mode using those preamp outputs. I think DALI make a matching sub for these Spektor 2, and I think it sells for about 500 bucks. So yeah, it's another expense, but that's where I would go if I were to upgrade this system to the next level, because I think adding a sub would make a profound difference here. Now, whenever you talk about putting together an affordable hi-fi system, you're never too far away from somebody who tells you, you should really buy secondhand because you get much better deals for that. Yes, but, and I'm not going to go into it here, if you're thinking along those lines, then you need to go and listen to episode 34 of the Darko.Audio podcast, where I tackle this issue head on. Now, all of this leads me to, I guess, what I would call my 5 golden rules for buying a hi-fi system blind, without being able to hear it or audition it first. Now, my first rule is always, if possible, buy from a retailer or an outlet that offers a money-back guarantee, or at least store credit if you don't like it. So I bought the speakers and the DAC from Amazon Germany. So I've got a month to, I guess, effectively audition these and then send them back if I don't like them. I'm probably not going to do that. However, the amplifier, the Rotel, I bought from my local dealer. And I know that if I don't like it, I can take it back. And even if they don't give me a refund, they'll give me store credit. So those kinds of arrangements give me peace of mind, because I realise that not everybody has local hi-fi stores close to them anymore. And many people do have to sort of take a punt on something, take a risk. But don't expose yourself financially to a risk that you really cannot afford, because if you buy something and you can't return it, you're stuck with it. And that brings me to my second rule, is never ever max out your budget. Don't buy gear that you can't afford to walk away from. Like, I could have afforded to spend $3 on this hi-fi system. I didn't, I spent $1,000. Why? Because if I'm stuck with something, I really find it much easier to resell it and not take too much of a loss. And then that extra $2,000 gives me room to buy other things if I need to, like the subwoofer, or if I didn't like the amplifier, sell that and buy another one. It gives me breathing room. That breathing room in my budget gives me flexibility. It allows me to buy other things and really to build experience. The temptation is always to think, well, I've got this many $1,000, so I must spend all of that money on a hi-fi system. And that's fine if you know what you are doing, if you are experienced in buying a hi-fi system. But if it's your first time out, please don't max out your budget. Give yourself some breathing room. And that leads us to my third golden rule for buying hi-fi blind or without an audition, is try to buy from trusted brands, brands that have been around for many years. DALI's been around for many years, so has Rotel. Topping, not so much. The reason I bought the Topping, apart from its feature set that was very specific that I wanted, so the sample rate display and the toggling input, was also that I'd had a great experience with their D10S DAC a couple of years ago. And brands like Topping are very popular on Amazon. But if you go to your hi-fi dealer, your high street dealer, you're more likely to find these kind of big well-known brands like Denon or Marantz or Bowers & Wilkins or JBL. And those are the brands that, if you've never built a hi-fi system before, those are the brands I would start with, because there's a reason they've been around for so long. Golden rule number 4. Please ignore the advice that you hear out there on the internet that you should spend 50% of your budget on your loudspeakers. I don't think that is true any longer when shopping at this price point, because affordable, very, very good loudspeakers are really easy to find. So you look at Wharfedale, Mission, and then DALI. $200, great speakers. But that's not the case with amplifiers. $200 amplifiers aren't so readily available. You really need to be spending 300, 400, 500 euros on your amplifier. So more than your speakers, especially if you're shopping from storied or trusted brands, because you won't get a Marantz or a Denon amp or a Rotel below, say, 400 euros. Even the NAD C316 BEE V2 that I've enthused about in the past is 449 euros retail. So you need to be thinking roughly 400 euros and above for your amplifier, which is why when I started out, I was looking at DALI loudspeakers that sold for roughly 200 euros, because I knew that the amp was going to cost me way more. And my 5th golden rule for buying hi-fi gear blind is don't. Don't do it unless you really, really, really have to, unless you're guaranteed your money back or store credit. The best thing to do is go and work with a local hi-fi dealer to find some gear that suits you, or at least part of the system. But if you're thinking, hang on a minute though, I don't have a hi-fi dealer near me, it closed down 10 years ago or whatever, then you need to go to the next town or the next city. And if that's a long way away, then make a weekend of it. The point is, you have to do some work. I cannot give you a shopping list of things you should buy, a set and forget hi-fi system. No hi-fi reviewer on the planet can do that. You have to do some work, definitely, no doubt about it. And that involves trial and error. That involves buying things, sending them back, and then buying something else, and then buying something else. This is why you shouldn't max out your budget, because the trial and error process is where you learn. And when you learn, you pick up experience. And that experience then helps you buy better gear in the future. If you're asking yourself, John, why did you buy this €1,000 audio system? And how does it stack up to another €1,000 system? I would say to you, I'm glad you asked, because we're going to tackle that in the next video. But if you thought this video was useful, please hit the like button down below. If you like my attitude towards high-end, high-performance audio, hi-fi gear, and it isn't always focused on the expensive stuff, you should know that. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that I bounce around between really cheap stuff and really expensive stuff. If you dig that, then please subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. But don't get too hung up on cables at this level. Reasonably well-made cables are totally fine here, totally fine.